The month of September in third grade, our student goal is to multiply by 5 and 10 by the end of the month. This should come fairly quickly because in previous grade levels, they've counted by 5s and 10s, but they might be a little rusty. So to warm up first, I would give students some of these pizza cards. Each card has 5 slices of pizza. This is going to help you see how they are counting by 5s. So I would just give a random number to each student sitting at your table. Start lower. For students that you think can handle more, you can give them more, but basically you're saying, I want you to count these. How many pizza slices do you have? Now, the thing that I really like to do is have them match it with fingers, because a lot of the times when they're keeping track of multiplication and skip counting, we're asking them to count like 5, 10, 15, 20, but this is only one. So when they see 5, 10, 15, and then 20, they're starting to see there is actually a quantity when we're asking them to keep track of their skip counting. The other reason I like these cards is that you can see the slices of pizza. So if they're rusty and they can't remember, you can go 5, 10, and if they can't remember, 15 comes next. They can do 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then hopefully it continues on with 20, 25, 30. So these are just great little visuals for them to be thinking about groups of numbers right off the bat. So I'd always start with that first. This is just really quick, like 1 minute. Each person counts a collection. Then another option for a warm-up, maybe after you've done this a few times with students, you could also do the mix it up multiple game. So you grab out, like on the bottom it says what kind of multiple cards it is. So I'm going to grab all the multiples of 5, because that's probably what we're going to work on more than 10s, but you can also do this to practice 10s. So what you do is kind of mix them up, and then I just simply put them down in front of the students, like real quickly, and they have to figure out which multiple is missing. And I always tell them I've only gone up to 50. There are some extras for students who could use a little enrichment. They do go higher than 50. So what they're going to hopefully do is count like 0, 5, 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. I don't see 45, so that would be the one that's missing. So you can play that a few times, again, really quick, just trying to warm up their brain, get them thinking about counting by 5s. Obviously, you can do times 10 as well, but I think most are going to be really solid with the 10 facts. Then we're going to move into concrete representations of multiplication. So each of you has some frogs and some lily pads. We want them to be starting to connect equations with the frogs and lily pads. So when we say like 2 times 5, we're talking about 2 lily pads with 5 frogs on each. And those are the words that are like really important on each lily pad. So what we want to do is maybe give them a multiplication expression for them to build. Or I like this because there's not really a ton of these frogs, and it gets kind of chaotic when everyone's doing it, but you can pass the frogs and lily pads and have them make one, and you have to tell them it has to be times 5. So let's say they make this one, and the rest of the students should be figuring out what the answer is and maybe even what the expression is. So have them creating it, and this is going to help you see, are they understanding equal groups of 5? So you would expect the rest of the students to write, this is 3 times 5 equals 15. Ask them, how did you figure it out? I counted by 5s, and so on. So you can have a few students doing it, have them go in partners and do it, however you feel like it would work best in your group. But the idea is to have them working with concrete objects to make sure they're understanding the multiplication expression. Then after you've done that for a little while, you can start to move on to more visual models that are very helpful for practicing times 5. So we have simple ones like these. These are just visual flashcards. We have 5s, you have 10s at your disposal to use this month. So they can physically count the 10s if they can't figure it out. So that's kind of nice to have those visuals. Same with the 5s. These are all groups of 5. So you can use these as you see fit. If you really want them not to be using those, You could have just like a piece of paper and cover that and then show the visual if they need it. But this would be great for starting out with multiplication. And then you can move into, as the resource moves on and starts to teach visual models. So here are visual area cards with grids. So you're going to have grids like these, grids where they're partially covered. You'll have grids that are empty, and then you'll have a missing part. The missing factor is more like division. So those you don't have to bring out quite yet this month. They can just pretty much go back in your box. But all you're going to do is hand them this and say, what is the product? What is the product? What is the product? I would start with these first. If your students are catching on, then you can move to ones where they're partially covered because they can picture it. And last, do the open area model because if they cannot do the grids, then you know they need a little more practice. If they can't do it without grids, they need more practice with this. So then you're asking them really to visualize that this is 5 rows with 5 in each row. You could also do a match game. If you had time, you could put them all out and they can match the ones that belong together. That will also be awesome. You can also put one out and ask them to write an expression and the answer. The possibilities are pretty much endless. So those are visual area cards. And then the bar model cards are also pretty fun. Bar models aren't as common, but that's another good way for them to start thinking about multiplication. So here you can see there's 5 petals on each flower. So what would the expression be? What is the product? These are division cards. So you're going to pull those out. Those will be later in the school year because they'll be matching them with expressions. But again, here are some dot dice. What would the expression be? What would the product be? So you'll have to just pull out division. Here we've got tally marks. We've got trees. There are 5 slices of watermelon, 1 time. So we're just trying to help them think about groups. So you can practice with bar model multiplication cards as well. And then one other much more abstract visual is visual dot cards. These are 2s and 5s. So you can just pull out the 5s and only work with the 5s. And actually, it's kind of great because we have some that have 2, but there's 5 groups. So kind of practicing that commutative property. So another example of just putting one out, tell me what you see, what's the expression, what's the product, finding ones that might be similar, like are these going to have the same product? Are they not going to have the same product? Just getting them thinking about stuff like that. And that's really it. You're just practicing in multiple ways to get them used to counting by 5s and counting by 10s. And then check with flashcards at the end of the month to see how are they doing. Do they have those? And you're good to go for September.